Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Social Contract, a Commander podcast. I'm Mike Almond, and joining me is my co-host, Alex Lapp. Alex, what's up, man?
Well, Mike, today we have another very special guest.
We do. Joining us this week is designer for Channel Fireball, recent addition to the Commander Advisory Group, Game Nights champion, talented comedian. You can hear her on the Better Than Heroes podcast and co-host of the Commander Sphere podcast. It's Rachel Weeks. Rachel, what's up? Did I miss anything? And if I did, please, take a break, okay?
Well, a lot of people knew me at the beginning because I made a bunch of playmats for Inked Gaming, but I haven't made one in a little while, so I am taking a break on that.
Well, my question for you about Inked Gaming is, did you ever make a lasagna-themed playmat?
Hey.
I haven't yet. That is on the docket of things for me to do, but I have tried a number of illustrations of lasagna, and it looks gross every time.
I know, right? That's the problem with food. But what we wanted to talk with you about today is something that I had not heard of until recently, because I'm not totally versed in every aspect of Commander. But as soon as I read what you had to say about Lasagna Tier EDH, I was immediately interested. Rachel, tell us about Lasagna EDH.
So this is the Lasagna Tier came from a joke episode that Dan and I did at the very beginning, when we started. It was right when Command Fests had just started coming out, so everybody was it was the peak of everybody talking about how to rank the power levels of decks. That was all Twitter was talking about. And we're like, you know what, we should come up with our own tiered list. And we came up with a 9-tiered power list, and it was absolute nonsense. It was ridiculous. It was like Raven tier was like a standard deck, and their tier 9 is just not a deck at all. We were like a bicycle or your friend Chris, those are tier 9 decks. So it was this ridiculous list, and we had a lot of fun with it. And one of the tiers was Lasagna Tier, where Dan just read a recipe to lasagna, and we sort of expanded on that and kind of jokingly referred to our sort of super casual version of Commander as Lasagna Tier. And then that sort of developed into this more formal declaration of what it means to us. So that, the way we define Lasagna Tier today is, at any power level, it is playing with the priority of improving the quality of the game rather than winning. So you make moves with the intention of making big things happen and having exciting things happen, and sort of crescendoing the game rather than just the optimal play every turn.
I love that. That's everything that we're about here.
Yeah.
I like everything that I just heard.
It's building the story and what's going to make for the better story, what's going to make for the better experience overall, as opposed to, all right, Labman, Thassa's Oracle, all right, shuffle up, play again. It's a very collaborative thing. It's the social contract in food form, which are two of my favorite things. So thank you for that.
Yeah, it's exactly that thing where we're just it's a collaborative effort rather than a competitive effort, which is the primary difference.
And when you say difference, for me, this is how I feel most of my actual play groups are, or at least this is what I'm looking for the most. Would you say that this is? Do you seek this out, or is this just kind of the most common? I guess the most common tier of EDH, with it being something that is only it's existed for a while, but it's been no, this is the thing, and recognized as the actual tier. It's pretty cool.
Thank you. I definitely think it's an aspirational thing.
Sure.
I think it's something that we're in naming it, in calling it Lasagna Tier and spelling out what it means and specifying that this is your goal. I think it really clarifies for a lot of players, like, oh, this is my priority in a game, I should build that way, rather than, and I should play that way, and that sort of thing. Because we have this problem. It's not a problem. It's sort of the puzzle of casual EDH. Is
we can call it a problem.
Out,
That's okay.
I mean, it's figuring out how to balance playing optimally and building optimally and still like having a fun and productive game with our friends.
Right.
And I think figuring out that like, oh, my priority is this and everything I do should lead toward this fun big thing that we want the most, it makes it easier for you to make decisions. It's like a goal, I guess, rather than, you know, competitive EDH or even like optimized EDH, which is just, we're playing to win, we're playing the cards that we have to win. Mm-hmm. And not that that's, you know, less or not fun. It's just not the kind of EDH that I play, and I think it's probably not the EDH that most people play.
It's such a good screed that I wish I had come up with it. So you say it's an aspirational way to play EDH. So that would imply that there is a non-lasagna tier. What's the opposite of lasagna tier EDH? Is that like eggplant parmesan? Is that cold manicotti? What's the opposite?
Man, I feel like it's like a granola bar. Like, it's efficient. No. It gets the job done, you know? Like, it gets you not hungry anymore.
It's soylent.
Lasagna is such a superfluous way to eat food, right?
And there's so much stuff that goes into it. Like, you said granola, and I was going in that granola or like the smoothie that has the nutrients in it and it just tastes like mud. Kind of thing. I
mean, it doesn't even have to taste bad, but like you can fill like a protein shake full of ice cream or berries or something that. It still tastes good, but it's like the point of it is to get, you know, your nutrients for the morning. It's like an energy thing, right? Lasagna has never like made someone feel better.
Right.
Other than the, you know, the taste and the flavor there.
Right.
What I see, and I think what Mike sees as well, is group hug and politics. But that's just our lens. What archetypes do you think of when you think of lasagna tier EDH, or do you think of any?
So I think it can be any archetype. I think you can build in a way like with this intention, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm going to build an aggro deck, but I want to build an aggro deck that does neat big stuff and allows for my opponents to do neat big stuff. I don't think Stacks really lives in this space because Stacks and like control is tough because that's sort of designed to slow down and control the bigness of a game.
Right. And
the intention of Lasagna tier is the bigness, right? So if you're running, you know, mono blue counter spells Drake guy, what's his name?
Talrand,
yeah. Like you're just making drakes from counterspells. Your goal isn't to have like a big splashy game. It's to make sure nothing happens until you can kill people with drakes, I guess.
Yeah. Right. Stacks is bringing the taser to the dinner party that hopefully you didn't really want to bring unless somebody's coming on way too hard there.
It's just
you don't need to tase lasagna.
It's just a different intention, right? Like I think it would be hard to have a control deck that's goal is to improve the quality of the game. And when I say quality, I mean just like the moments of a game, right? Like you want a story to come out of every game that you play.
Absolutely.
Right? So you want to be like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and if there's a hard control player, you're like, and then nothing happened because this guy wouldn't allow us. And that makes it trickier.
And then I tried to do something and I couldn't, and then I untapped, but I didn't, so I picked a thing to untap, and then they said, okay,
and then we moved tables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like a Stacks deck has the intention of winning. Like that's just a different kind of deck.
Right. So when you're talking about aspirational and everything along those lines, I'm with you 100%. Mm-hmm. And you brought up like kind of a way that I didn't think about actually doing tiers, and it makes me really happy that this started as a joke and then kind of expanded into this is the way that people would try and, again, we called it power level and things along those lines where it's, okay, well, what's your deck? Well, my deck's a 7. Well, okay, what the heck does that mean? Like, it's a 7 here versus a 4 here versus a 9.
But your system talks about the goal of your deck.
What is the actual goal? Well, the goal is to just make the most fun game possible with just these big swings and all these different archetypes, essentially, except for Stacks, because Stacks is the worst. But
we have a whole episode where we call Stacks players perverts. And we have a t-shirt. We have a t-shirt that says Stacks is for perverts on it.
I did not know I was walking into this.
Yeah, Alex, this is actually why I was excited to have Rachel onto the podcast.
How terrible.
I'm sorry, can I say
I feel
perverts?
assaulted.
I didn't even ask.
No, you're fine. Don't worry. This is really just our intervention episode for Alex because
I have a Stacks deck.
Yeah, you do, but you give it the same amount of attention that you give to the other tiers or not the other tiers, but the other archetypes that I love so much.
Of course I do.
But see, when you do that, I want you to imagine that if you had 3 children, okay?
Oh my god.
And one of them was on the honor roll, and one of them was a star athlete, and the other one burned down houses. And then you told me I love all of my children equally. And I'm like, you can love them all equally, but know that the rest of us, one of them makes us very sad. I like my house. Stop burning it down.
It's funny because, like, you probably would give the most attention to the kid burning down houses, right? Like, that's just kind of how parenting works.
That's the thing, is my deck that burns down houses, it doesn't burn them down indiscriminately. It picks a house and it burns that house down. Right. It picks maybe it picks the mansion or the house with the I don't know, the angry dog. I don't know.
The Simic house.
Yeah.
The house of Simic must burn. Yeah,
house.
exactly.
The breeding
you know what?
pool. Yeah.
My gosh.
Wait, how do we burn a pool to the ground?
So, Alex, hear me out.
Yeah.
So, this deck, all right? So, when people are sitting down hoping for Lasagna Tier, and then somebody else brings in this terrible, no, I'm going to burn the entire meal, no one gets to eat unless I say so, your Stacks deck, it's literally just calling and ordering in. That's what it is, because it's, this guy's terrible, let me take care of this, and then we're going to keep playing, okay, everybody? That's the Stacks deck.
You call the waiter over and ask them to reseat one of your guests?
Yeah, basically. I'm sorry. This individual that we brought in is absolutely terrible.
We would all like to not eat lasagna with them. Is that all right? I'll take their fork and bend it. That's what my deck does.
Another part of it that we talked about is it was like lasagna is to share, right? So like when you make a lasagna tier deck, you make it for like other people to enjoy. Right. So
because you don't eat a lasagna alone if you can help it, right?
Yeah, I mean you can, but like you'll feel really sick after.
Yeah.
Lasagnas can be different sizes.
But like to be totally fair, like I have 2. I play Dual Commander as well. It's like a more competitive
1v1
format.
commander.
And I have 2 Stacks decks. I have Duretti Stacks and I have Winota Hate Bears. So it's like I absolutely like get the appeal of Stacks and I absolutely understand that. It's just like outside what I would ever do in a multiplayer situation.
See,
unless I was playing like CEDH.
Right. I mean, admittedly, I'm also the person that with the lockdowns and pandemic and staying inside a whole lot extra. I've been brewing because that's how I've stayed sane, and I can neither confirm nor deny that I have literally set up 4 different decks at my dining room table and then just walked around and played each of them before. So the idea of, hey, it's okay, we're going to play in this format or this format or this format, totally fine. I appreciate that. I want to just be around people who want to have the same kind of experience and fun. Mm-hmm.
It's just great. I love this Lasagna Tier EDH. I love the ethos of it. It's just fantastic. But let's go ahead and pivot to another interesting fact about you, and that, Rachel, is that you are very recently, in fact, a member of the Commander Advisory Group.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that?
I got a message out of the blue from Sheldon Menery, who
You're hired. Get to work.
And like I'd talked to Sheldon before. This wasn't just like a message from Sheldon Menery. I didn't get like an owl in the mail.
I've been accepted.
He sent me a message and he's like, "Hey, we're considering you for the position. Would you accept?" And I said, "Yeah, I absolutely would."
Heck yeah.
And then he said, "Okay, you're in if you want it." And then I was in. We, haven't done a whole lot since they just did a rules update.
Right.
But so far it's been great. Most of the time we just communicate about what things are sort of hot and happening in Commander ethos.
What are all the hip kids up to?
Right.
Yeah, basically. What everybody's sort of talking about or concerned about, and giving our perspective and experience on it is really all we're being asked to do. So I talked about it a little bit with Ellie of the Vale, but I think my job is to communicate from the community to the rules committee, because I don't make any of the changes. We only provide insight and experience, right? I can only say what I've heard and what I've experienced in game, and then we leave it up to the rules committee to make final decisions on banning and unbanning and rule changes and so forth. Obviously we have input, but there's no final word coming from the advisory group.
Sure. So the Commander Advisory Group has, with you, multiple people were appointed along with you, so it's now grown in size. You all, I assume, talk to each other at a decent rate. Do you all get along relatively well? Do you have people on the group that you disagree with on a fundamental level about certain things?
Tell us who you hate, Rachel.
Yeah,
I'm not asking for names. I'm not asking for names.
I think that there's definitely a variety of opinions on the advisory group, and that's what it's supposed to be, right? I think different people have different priorities and come from different backgrounds, whether it's competitive or casual, or it's in the United States or not, or you're a content creator or not. Obviously, some of those are unbalanced perspectives, but I do think that the Rules Committee is working on kind of making sure that there's a member of the community that represents each EDH player, which is obviously a loud and differing group.
Yeah,
we're a lot of people and we're real loud.
We are, and even when you're talking about because I've heard it said by multiple content creators, and I've heard it talking about how so we understand that CEDH is a thing, but it's also this smaller group that we still have to balance for, but at the same time when we're balancing for them, there's all these other things that we have to keep in perspective and all these groups. So is it, man, you just got into the job and I'm asking you the intricacies here, but is it one of those things where everything that comes across your table, for lack of a better term, is it how does this affect everything for all these groups and talking with the other people on the advisory group, or is it just a hey, how do you feel about this, Rachel?
I think of it as closer to a hey, how do you and the people around you feel about this, Rachel specifically. When it comes to the CEDH community, there's Jim just got added. Jim from Spike Feeders just got added to the group as well, and has a much clearer perspective on what the CEDH community needs and wants. So I would trust his opinion on those matters over mine, which is why he's on the group. But I think we all are sort of guided by this philosophy document, which they released, I think, last year, and is on the website. And if you haven't read it, you should check it out. But it states the intention of Commander and the intention of the Rules Committee and their, what is our guiding philosophy, which is Commander's a casual format, and we're going to do as little as we can to allow you to play as much of the game as you want, because it's designed for you to have fun in your way. But overall, Commander's a casual format, and we want to keep it a fun and healthy place. Because as much as we talk about Rule Zero and how I think Rule Zero is an incredible tool that only our format has, where you can sit down and be like, hey, do you mind if I play a Planeswalker as my commander? And that table can decide, which I'm absolutely for. But if they were okay, should we formally unban all Planeswalkers? That's a much bigger and grander step that affects these global communities, like your Magic Online's, maybe someday your arena, but like these are people who don't have that rule zero moment where they can talk about their intention of the game, like we talk about in like Lasagna Tier type stuff. There are places where the guidelines set by the rules committee, you know, has to make that as fun of a game as possible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, it's a great responsibility, and it's good to have people with perspective like yours, because it sounds like there's a lot of different perspectives on the committee.
There's a lot of people in our community, right? And everybody wants something a little bit different. So
sure.
Figuring out how to make the majority happy and keep the format healthy is a big responsibility. I feel very lucky that I can just be like, here's what I think, you figure it out, Sheldon. Like it's
that's awesome.
Like...
Now, you touched on something that I found interesting and that I've observed just as a EDH player. You said that the rules committee aims to do as little as possible to make the game as fun as possible. And that really lines up with what I've seen, and I think a lot of Commander players have seen, that the rules committee moves at a very glacial pace. They don't like to do bans, they don't like to do unbans, and they don't like to change the rules. Is that what you've noticed as well? How do you feel about this philosophy?
That is what I've noticed just as a player. I haven't really had a ton of perspective just from you know, the inside view, really. But I think they're very careful with the health of the format, which I appreciate. I don't think they take bans lightly. I don't think they take unbans lightly. And I think that's how it should be. It's a very big community. It's a global community. And the more it changes, the more confusing things are, the more like your investment in certain cards goes up and down. And like they really want you to be able to have a deck from 10 years ago, like a commander deck that you're like, this is my one commander deck and I'm going to be able to play it for 10 years more. So you have this consistency of it, right? And if you're unbanning and banning 10 new cards every year, then it's hard to keep up with this format, right? It's expensive.
That makes sense. Oh, for sure. See, in my head, I do not think this will come off as an insult, but if it does, feel free to
what are you going to say
drag me through the coals here. So in my head, this is the Commander Advisory Group is like it's like a Reddit post where you're given hey, this is what we're talking about from Sheldon, who's the grand Redditor in my head. And then you guys are putting your input onto it. You're kind of discussing, well, this is what I think about it. This is what I think about it. I agree with this. I don't agree with this. And they're taking all of that and then applying it to what is the healthiest thing that we can do with all of this input from these people that know what they're talking about and have only the best intent for the game at large. So it's the healthiest version of Reddit, which is, I understand, totally a counterbalance of each other.
Mike, did you just say that you intend for this not to be an insult, and then you straight up called Sheldon Menery the world's biggest Redditor?
No, I called him the grand Redditor.
Okay, that's even worse.
Yes, the grand. Which is, I know there was a better metaphor for it.
Yeah, like anything else.
It's just like it's
the,
like
the chairman of the board,
which is what Reddit is at its root, right? Like you give a topic, we give input, and that's very much what my experience has been so far. So they're like, hey, what are your opinions on these things? How do you feel about this? And then all of that input goes in, and they, take it into a much smaller room and hash things out. I mean, the rules committee has been with Commander and knows Commander so much more intimately than even the Commander Advisory Group, because they've just been with it for so long.
Right.
So, they have the history of like, oh, what was this format like when Rafellos wasn't banned? And
then he was, and then he wasn't, and then he was.
That knowledge is something I don't have, who's, newer to the format.
I thought of a better metaphor, but it wasn't nearly as funny in a terrible way. So I just stuck with my terrible one, and then Rachel used
That's great, Mike. You
more
just
apt
keep
metaphor.
digging that hole for yourself. That's fantastic.
Yeah, that's fine. No, like I said, feel free to drag me over the
Now,
coals.
this may be a bit of a pressing question, and you can definitely give me a very diplomatic answer. But I know that if I were on the Commander Advisory Group, I would,
oh boy,
personally, for me, I would be like, man, I really want to see all these cards that I want to see banned. I want to get this card banned. I want to get this card unbanned. I want this rule to change. Do you feel that drive to very much just get your flavor of EDH pushed through, or do you feel much more communal, less selfish sense like I would?
He asked the person who designed Lasagna Tier.
I mean, I am certainly on the side of let's do as little as possible and be as permissible as possible.
Right.
I know how I play and I know what I like, and Lasagna Tier is obviously something else, but that's a segment of what EDH is. And so I wouldn't I would just want people to be able to play with the cards that they want, and I want them to have a nice time.
Sure.
So I would lean toward unbans rather than bans, even though I would never want to see a humility at another table in my life. But, I'm not waving the ban humility flag in front of Sheldon's face. Because, he's seen it, and
he's heard of it.
He's heard of this card. It sucks. But I definitely am on board with the let's just try and make it a good place. And I trust the community to be able to figure out how to play the game how they want to do it. Like I said, I think Rule 0 is the tool that we use to make EDH what we want it. I have a Princess Twilight Sparkle deck that's obviously completely illegal.
We've talked about that card.
It
makes me favorite.
Is that the Every Pony Wins the Game card?
Every pony.
It is the Every Pony Wins the Game.
Oh my god.
One of my favorite episodes that we've done so far was us talking about Silver Border.
That is going to be the best deck.
I got to correct Alex every single time that he said any player, and I said, no, it's any pony.
Whenever any player.
Any pony.
So if you do not self-identify as a pony, you did not win.
Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, I guess I lose.
It's every pony. It's not any pony.
Listen.
Okay.
Lasagna Tier says that every pony, and any player that wants to have a good game with good stories is going to win at the end. So I appreciate that.
My lasagna is certified pony free.
All right, now that we have discussed food, Reddit, Lasagna Tier just in general, and everything, I think we're going to take a quick break so I can regain my composure. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, and we're coming back to you with our Something Old, Something New segment. Normally, this is where I like to give some advice to some of the newer players to Commander, and Alex gives some advice to our veteran players. But whenever we have a guest, we got to take advantage of that. So, Rachel, you're gonna take so much work off both of our backs this week.
Thanks, Rachel.
Why don't you tell us something that you would suggest for all players? Just what advice would you give to people?
I've talked about it a little bit, but Commander is the only format where you can play the cards that you like. And I think you should take full advantage of that. When we start playing Commander, I think everybody plays the cards that they like and are cool, and you're like, I just like the picture.
It's a Ted. I have to.
Yeah, it's oh no, I can't think of his name. Dan always talks about how it's like a 9-mana 8/8 trample with regenerate, and he was like, I couldn't think of a more powerful card.
Sure. I think the one for me was Force of Nature.
Oh god.
Where I was like, this is an 8/8 with trample with upkeep of 3 or 4 green every turn, and I was like, but it's an 8/8.
Yeah.
Here's this. When I had that moment, it was an Eldrazi.
But that's there's no format where you just get to play that card, right? Without just getting run over. So I think you should take full advantage of of your options and be like, I like this card. I know it's not the best option, or I know it's not even the most fun option. You're like, I like playing with it, and I'm going to try and play with it or with the people that, you know, want to play that kind of game.
Sure.
I got asked a couple of times what my opinions on planeswalkers as commanders are, and it was like, if you want a planeswalker as your commander, ask your playgroup. Like, do it. Build the deck. I mean, you should probably have a backup creature in the deck in case, you know, you want to switch it out. But I absolutely want you to be able to play that deck. Or if you want to build a silver border deck, do it. As long as the people at the table are cool with it. Like, I'm cool with it. And I think that's just how you're going to get the most out of this format, is really leaning into what you like to do and what makes you feel good to do. Mm-hmm. I kept talking about this Kaikar deck. I built a Kaikar deck because I was like, I need a Spellslinger deck. I don't have a Spellslinger deck. I don't know how to build them, and I need to learn. I need to learn and experience
I've heard
a
you
Spellslinger
talk about this,
deck.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hated it. I hated the deck.
I have to build this deck because I have to have one. Oh, wait, this is why I don't have one.
And it's like, no, I don't. I don't need this experience at all. This is a game that I play because I like it. Like, I don't I don't have to do that.
We're gonna cut to Alex looking at Kaikar and just going,
My boyfriend kept making fun of me because I kept trying to make it a token deck. I was like, okay, if we put Anointed Procession and I put in like Impact Tremors and like all these, I just wanted to like cast a Mercadia's Downfall, and he's like, no, that's not what Kaikar does. They're gonna kill you because they think you're playing like an interactive horrible Kaikar deck.
and you countered, that's not what your Kaikar does.
No, all I wanted to do was swing with spirits, and he was like, what are you doing? So I took it apart. I just took the deck apart recently, and I was like, you know what? I have done some self-searching, and I don't need a Spellslinger deck right now. And then Orvar came out, and now I have the creaturiest Spellslinger deck in existence. So it's like you'll find the commander you like, you'll find the card you like. I feel like we really put a lot of pressure to be like, oh, I have to have one of each color combination. It's like, no, you can have 2 Jund decks if you like Jund.
You hear that, Alex? You can have 2 Jund decks, Alex.
So what Rachel doesn't know, and what makes that truly funny, is that specifically, I do only have 1 deck of each color combination, and specifically when the new Jund Mana Burn Commander came out in Commander Legends, I bemoaned the fact that I already had a Jund deck. But that's not what I
knew it. Like, Jund is exactly the color.
Not only did you nail it, but I spent hours just doing that.
Hours?
Alex, it was more than 1 episode, okay. Alex.
Let's wrap back around to this, because we've already denigrated Stacks, and now we're denigrating Kaikar. And I have a Kaikar Stacks deck. So, this is double whammy.
Well, that's the thing, is, like, Kaikar's just not for me. And making that, like, realizing that was such a step for me.
Right.
When it's like, people love Kaikar, and I was like, people love this deck. How I have to figure out how to love this deck. And it's like, no, I don't.
And no one does. Like, the whole point and what I like about your advice is everybody starts and they put in cards in the deck where it's just, like you said, it's, I want to put this in there because I like this card. And then whether they play a game and they get laughed at the table because they're playing that card, or because, oh, I want to play this, but it doesn't help me a whole lot right now. And then they tune, and then they tune, and then they tune, and suddenly what you built the deck for is no longer, it's no longer recognizable. So the idea of just like, hey, play it because you want to play it. And Lasagna Tier as a whole is really cool. And Alex, it's okay if you want to play your Kaikar deck. It's all right because you want to play it. And that's the point of the advice. It's okay, buddy.
You just have to find people that want to play against it, and that's the tricky part.
That's not a problem for this deck at all.
For that one, it's totally okay.
Well, there you go.
But that being said, like, absolutely make the Jund Mana Burn commander, because I want to see that happen.
What's your other Jund deck?
Sekuar Deathkeeper.
Okay, so that's
Afterlife
totally
Travel.
different.
Right? All right. I if we don't move on, I'm just going to keep picking on it.
I have the same problem as you, Rachel. Every deck I make becomes a token deck.
Oh, I love a token deck.
They're the best.
My mono blue deck is a token deck. Mm-hmm. My combo deck is a token deck.
They all turn into token decks eventually.
My Aristocrats deck is a token deck. It's ridiculous.
My Jund Afterlife deck is a token deck.
Yeah.
Numbers are fun.
I like having a lot of things. I like having all these things. I'm like, look how good I'm doing. I have so many things.
I love my playmat. I wish I could play a deck that made it to where I no longer saw any
I want to never see anything on my playmat again.
Well, that's our advice for players this week. And you can tell because I'm newer than Alex, but it's something that applies to both of us. So there you go. Yeah. We're going to move on here to a segment I'm very excited about. Ooh, can I see that? So we're going to talk about some cards that are really underplayed. We each think that we're bringing some really interesting cards to the table, whether it's because it's a powerful effect that you don't see very often, or just because this card is so weird. We should do that. So if you want to grab any of these cards, you can actually help us out in the process. So we've partnered with tcgplayer.com. So if you're looking for any singles, sealed product, deck boxes, sleeves, playmats, really anything to spice up your game experience, you can go to bit.ly/EDH social or click the link in our show notes. You don't pay anything extra, and you'll really help us out by buying all the things that you were going to pick up anyway. So Alex, why don't you start us off with a card that our listeners may be interested in picking up?
Absolutely, Mike. My card is Pulse Mage Advocate, and this is another one of my favorites. This is a white card, back when they printed white cards. Pulse Mage Advocate is 2 and a white for a creature human cleric. It's a 1/3, and it has a single activated ability. Tap, return 3 cards from an opponent's graveyard to their hand. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield.
I like this card a lot.
So we have mono white Reanimator, and for no mana each activation.
Yeah.
The only requirement is that any one opponent of yours must have at least 3 cards in your graveyard, in their graveyard, which isn't always the case, but I find that they're more than happy to get some cards back to their hand, and I'm more than happy to reanimate a creature for 0 mana. And Mike, this card is not really showing up anywhere for such a powerful Reanimator spell. This is in 369 decks out of 217,000, which is 0%. It was printed in Judgment, and it cost under $1.
So the funnier part about that is that you said it's in 369 decks, and I know for a fact that 2 of them are mine.
Oh yeah,
I love this card.
Great card.
Because there is nothing funnier to me, and that's actually why I bought it in the first place. When I'm playing against somebody that's got a wheel deck, and they're just like, I'm gonna wheel stuff, haha, and looking at somebody put something really cool into their graveyard, I'm like, you want it back? You want a couple things back?
You want that?
You want that?
Yeah, right. It kind of doubles as graveyard hate, which is really
it sure
funny.
does.
Like, you could do it in response to a reanimate and just mess up their day, right? You target the 3 cards, right?
You do.
Turn target 3 target cards in an opponent's graveyard. It's so silly. I love the cards that like this, and this is why we actually do this segment. I love the cards like this where it's okay if you want to use this in the most efficient or effective way possible. It can hang. It might not be the most upper tier of power, but it can hang. And if you want to do something neat just cuz, it also absolutely checks that. It dots those I's, it crosses the T's. It's awesome. I like this card a lot, Alex. I'm very proud.
So one thing that's interesting about Pulse Mage Advocate is that it's a part of a cycle of 5 cards, all in Judgment, but it's not a 5-color cycle. It's 3 white cards and 2 green cards.
Huh.
And they all have Mage Advocate in their name. So I'll go through these, and we don't really have to talk about each of them, but suffice to say, in my opinion, this is by far the best one.
Sure.
Which is why I picked it. The next best one I would say is Null Mage Advocate for 2 and a green. It's a 2/3 Insect Druid with a tap, return 2 target cards from an opponent's graveyard to their hand, destroy target artifact or enchantment, which is fantastic.
It's in green.
It's in green.
That's in green.
I thought you said black and was like, what?
No. These are all green.
Immediately starts typing. We're pausing the recording.
Like, what? We have Shield Mage Advocate, which is 2 and a white human cleric 1/3 that says tap, return target card from an opponent's graveyard to their hand, prevent all damage that would be dealt to any target this turn by a source of your choice. Bit of a fog effect. And then Spurn Mage Advocate, it's a 1/1 human nomad for a white. Tap, return 2 target cards from an opponent's graveyard to their hand, destroy target attacking creature. It's very nice for 1 mana.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And lastly, Force Mage Advocate, which is 1 and a green for a 2/1 Centaur. Tap, return target card from an opponent's graveyard to their hand, and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So there's a little bit of variety, but I think Pulse Mage Advocate is my favorite, because reanimating is more powerful than any of those effects.
Mm-hmm. Sure. You hear that? You hear that, everybody? White's doing fine. They did a cycle that got 5 white cards and 2 green. It's cool. Everybody calm down.
This is the last good white card they printed for 20 years. Let's go on to your pick, Mike.
Yeah, so I was super excited about this one because I don't know that it's the least used card that we've used on this segment that is also not banned.
No, I've got your beat on that one.
Dang it. All right, fine. But
you beat
I was
me
going to
this
say,
week.
I don't get to take full credit on it anyway because I got some help. So Loading Ready Run, they did their pre-release for Kaldheim, and I love this card for a bunch of reasons, but the main reason that I love it is they decided they were going to do a blind, is this a magic card or is this a metal band? Question segment. And one of the cards that came up is Delrake. And this is a 6/6 for 6 generic and a black creature horror with trample. It also has the text, you may sacrifice 3 black creatures instead of paying Delrake's mana cost. So, all I read on this is free creature that is a 6/6 trample and sack outlet for literally, I don't know what the actual breakdowns of archetype are, but I know there's a lot of black decks that care about sacrificing their own creatures to get value. So the idea of playing a 6/6 trample creature for nothing and doing the thing that your deck wants to do, it's ridiculous. And the main reason to bring this up, it's in 37 decks. Mm-hmm. I thought after they did a segment on it and publicized it that it would go up a bunch, and it went from 35 to 37. So, people, this card needs some work. It does
what you're saying
cool stuff.
Is that Loading Ready Run does not control the Magic finance market.
They don't need to control it, but they need to control. Well, you know what? They're doing just fine. I'm proud of them. I'm more sad that when I also Googled this to figure out exactly how I'm supposed to pronounce it, I did find one song that was from a metal band called Delrake, and I was like, okay, it's not the band, so it's still cool. It can be both, but I love this card. It's just, the thing looks disgusting and gross and scary.
The art is sweet, yeah.
It's so cool. It's so cool.
It wears the souls of its victims like jewels on a chain.
Like, that is the most metal band thing I've heard on not a metal band. And I'm like, all right, good job by you guys. I like this card a whole lot.
Fantastic.
Rachel, what you got for us?
Well, it definitely seems like I took a page out of your book with this pick, but my pick was Reprocess, which is 2 black for a sorcery, and it says sacrifice any number of artifacts, creatures, and or lands. Draw a card for each permanent sacrificed this way. So this is an incredibly powerful effect.
Yep. Yep.
It's obviously in any mono black aristocrats deck, anything you're doing. I just built Tevishzat Nadir, and I put reprocess in that deck, and I have drawn no less than 15 cards with reprocess. 15 cards. This is in 568 decks, which means it is in 0% of black decks.
It's funny, EDH this is deck. In my Jund Afterlife deck, and it does work.
It's very impressive.
You just sack your board and draw a ton of cards.
Both printings are right around 50 cents. It's in Ursa Saga and in 7th edition. Both of the arts are sweet. They're old border, unless you want to get, the foil 7th edition, which is gorgeous, but is also $55.
Oh boy.
Of course.
Yeah, that's a little bit of a jump, ain't it?
It's very expensive. It goes from 50 cents to 55. But I feel like it's a God Eternal Bantu effect is what it is. So if you're running God Eternal Bantu, consider reprocess. Obviously it doesn't have a body, but it's 1 mana cheaper. And it does allow you to sacrifice your lands and stuff, so you can draw so many cards with this thing. I just don't understand. I mean, I've seen a couple of people do bumps on it on Twitter, and everyone's like, "Whoa, how have I never seen this before?" And it's like, I don't know. Just go on Scryfall and look up, like, draw a card for each. Like, just scroll.
Oh yeah.
Like, there's so many things. And reprocess should be at the top of your list.
So, peek behind the curtain. Part of the reason that we do this segment, whether Alex knows it or not, is so I can just find a random card that I haven't heard about and like react to it when Alex brings it up and say, "What the heck is that?" And when you sent this card to us, my response was, "What the heck is that? That's awesome!" And Alex's response is, "I'm running this. What are you talking about?"
Yeah,
like, you've seen this before.
Yeah, no, this card's fantastic. I already run it. It's great.
It's one of those things that just like the only decks it's in are really Shirei decks, and that's just because it's the only decks that it pops up in EDH Rec for is these Shirei decks. So it's like everyone sees it in these Shirei lists on EDH Rec, and it's like, oh, I'll put it in the deck. But then it doesn't pop up in all of these mono black token aristocrats decks. Which there are many of.
The idea that this isn't... And don't get me wrong, I don't play the deck because I want everybody to have fun. But like the idea that this isn't in a vast majority of Corvold decks just makes me go,
blows my mind. Blows my mind. The top decks on it are Shirei, Endrixar, and... the next one is Rayhan, Last of the Abzan, just alone, which is very weird.
Like alone?
It's
Wait, what?
All those solo Rayhan players.
Oh, those are recent decks. Those aren't top decks. Hang on.
Okay.
Top commanders. There we go. Endrixar, Shirei, Corvold. It's in 31 Corvold decks, guys.
Great. Just great.
It's a good thing
Corvold
that
players
there's
get
only
on it.
35 Corvold decks out there, so at least it's high. Oh wait, no.
No, it's out of 4,250.
So Mike's talking about like metal bands and stuff like that. This would make just a phenomenal metal band cover. Let me go ahead and describe reprocess to you. So it's in, at least on this one that I'm looking at, the flavor text says everything will find its use in Phyrexia eventually. And you can see a bunch of Phyrexians death marching down towards an enormous forge that they're presumably walking into to be reprocessed into raw materials. Which is pretty metal.
It's pretty
so
metal.
Cool.
You ready for the alternate or the other printing flavor text? The battle's end is the meal's beginning. Ugh.
It's so gross too. It's like a squid eating a guy, and he's got. Oh man, it's so sweet, and it's like it's just a. I'm like a graphic designer is my day job, so when I see a card that's just like a beautiful card, I'm like, what decks can I put this in?
Sure.
And reprocess, even with the white border, is a beautiful card.
It's 7th a beautiful edition card that does a terrible, terrible, and awesome thing.
It's so powerful.
Man, I'm so concerned. Like, So we're not actually showing the art on anything. Do I have to put an explicit tag just for like the descriptions, and if somebody goes and looks up these cards and goes, "Ah, Mom, what's that?" Like, I don't know how this works at this point.
Yeah.
But those are very cool cards. If you want to pick them up, or literally anything, use our link. And man, those. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm still stuck on reprocess. I added it to a cart, and I haven't checked out yet.
You can build a deck with reprocess and Del Rake, which is pretty cool. Like,
right?
Just put that deck. I mean, you could get Pulse Mage Advocate in there. You could reanimate a Del Rake with a Pulse Mage Advocate.
Yeah, and your Orzhov version of the deck for sure. Yeah,
I'm down for this. I'm gonna make that. I don't know what it's gonna be yet, but
this is your Aristocrats Reanimator deck.
There we go.
Yeah, sweet. I'm into that.
So, I mean, we're talking about, literally leading into it, we're talking about, you know, oh, we can build this with these cards, we can build this with these cards. So I'm actually kind of curious. So, closing segment here, what are you working on or working with? Rachel, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, talking about your Tevesh Zat. What are you building right now? Are you more in the brewing state, or are you in the, like, oh, this is the deck that I'm running as much as I possibly can? Where's your commander mindset?
I am in a state of manic shopping right now. It's not great. I was talking about I built Tevesh Zat Nadir, which is mono black tokens, and it's so fun. It's very sweet. Basically, that came out of the ashes of my Krav and Ragnar deck. Where I was like, I like all like the tokeny aristocrat stuff of this, but having a 5 mana and a 6 mana commander that die to a board wipe is very frustrating. So that deck was sort of made from cards that I already had. And then I built Borborygmos Enraged. And that is another thing where it's like, I have all these cards, what deck can I make with them?
Sure.
And that I wanted to build a lands deck. I don't have one right now. And that became Borborygmos, which is sort of the opposite of a lands deck.
Yeah.
You're not playing them, you're throwing them in the trash.
Yeah, I'm putting a lot of them in the deck. They're just going somewhere else.
Yeah, there's like 54 lands or something in the deck. It's incredible.
Oof. A bit of silly trivia about Borborygmos. Did you know Borborygmos is a word, a real word, not just the name of a commander? It's the rumbling of your tummy. That's Borborygmi.
Oh my goodness.
He's an angry tummy!
A rumbling or gurgling noise made by the movement of fluid and gas in the stomach and intestines.
Okay, that's incredible.
I'm so happy right now.
That makes me like him like 15 times more. I'm so excited.
Fantastic.
Alex, I've known you for years.
Uh-huh.
I've done several of these episodes with you.
And you've always hated me until right now.
This is the most proud of you I've been this entire time. I'm so happy.
Not when I got hired to work at EDH Rec.
Listen, I'm proud of you because you've accomplished a lot of things.
Uh-huh.
And I'm proud of you because of the joy that you've brought into your life. But the joy that you just brought into my and Rachel's life. Now this joy is shared, and I'm experiencing it all at the same time. That is ridiculous. I did not know that. That card is infinitely better.
You know what's
funny?
And
it was good.
Is so my first D&D game ever, I played in Ravnica.
Okay.
We bought the book and we did a Ravnica campaign, and our DM like sort of knew magic but wasn't really familiar with magic lore, so he took a lot of liberties with like magic property, and Borborygmos was in the game, but he also had a brother who he named Lou Borygmos.
So does that mean that Borborygmos' first name is Borb, last name Ligmos?
I think so. Like,
this is my brother, Louis Rigmos.
Oh my gosh.
It's like, wow, you know, that's not really how names work.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Oh, this is the last 5 minutes have been too much for my stomach.
We have another thing, too, about Borborygmos. There was a famous case during a professional game. I'm not sure if it was a Grand Prix. We can fill in the details later, but there was a specific naming of a card. I believe it was with Pithing Needle. Okay. That was the player who played it named Borborygmos, but the card that they meant to name was Borborygmos Enraged, which is, as you know, a separate card from Borborygmos. And there was just this huge kerfluffle over, well, Borborygmos is a legal card, and that's what they named. It's like, but they clearly meant to name Borborygmos Enraged. And now the rule, as a result of that ruling, is that you don't have to name the exact true name of a magic card when you are naming a magic card for the purpose of resolving an effect, as long as both you and your opponents mutually understand which card you're talking about. So you could describe a card if you wanted to. Like, yeah, I want the furnace with like all the people walking into it and like burning themselves alive. But you don't know reprocess is the name. That's fine now because of Borborygmos.
I'll tell you what, if somebody gets rid of a card, if somebody gets rid of reprocess and is like, no, you don't get to play that card, that is the ultimate win for this podcast. Oh. No.
for reprocess, I think, to be.
That's fair.
It's like, oh yeah, you're
just
playing
got way
with
more
the big
famous.
boys now. Reprocess, not 50 cents anymore.
You are targeted removal from the deck. Holy cow, reprocess.
Whoa.
Luborygmos.
Bring a Jester's Capit out of the deck. Borborygmos.
Well, that was a big moment for Borborygmos. I got
it
a bunch of
was.
those cards in the mail. I haven't gotten to play it yet, so I'm pretty excited.
You can hear about that, I think, on Ristic Studies' video about Pithing Needle. He tells that anecdote. Just fantastic. Now, Borborygmos is such an incredible name that I wish it was in the recent Secret Lair drop about metal cards like like Death Metal, where it had what was it? Thraxamundar.
Oh yeah,
Thraxamundar was the only commander they have, which is a great name for a metal band. But I think Borborygmos could have been one too. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah,
metal commanders. That might be an actual episode or a segment in the future. Oh wait, we just had Kaldheim. Never mind. Like half of those are metal commanders.
Are intended to be metal commanders.
They look cool though.
They're very sweet. I like them a lot. I just built Orvar. That's my third thing I've been working on right now. Literally 3 decks I've built in the last few months. It's ridiculous.
I build like one deck every 3 years.
And that's only if you dismantle another one if it has the same colors.
I have not yet dismantled a deck. I've changed the deck over, but I've not yet dismantled one.
Oh well, then I approve of this message. I'm looking at the. I recently acquired an actual desk and computer chair, so I'd only make 40% of the same noises that I do before whenever I move and shift because I'm an anxious person. So I've got all of this cardboard that's just sitting on the floor of my room. And at the same time, I went and got all my Kaldheim stuff today, and that cardboard has sat on top of this cardboard. So it looks like I have this 6 foot by 3 foot tall mound of just magic stuff. And it's really just like, I don't know, 15
cardboard on cardboard.
And a couple and a fat pack. And I'm like, oh, well, that's disappointing.
It's like when you flash the catch, but you only show the hundreds at the front of the pile. And the rest is
There's
ones.
lots of singles. I think there's actually some loonies underneath it because
some Disney fun bucks.
Yeah, things along those lines.
All right. Well, Rachel, it was just a pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It was so much fun.
Absolutely. So thank you for listening, everyone. Rachel, again, thank you for joining us today. Where can people find you?
Absolutely. I'm on Twitter and Instagram as Wachel Reeks. It's cute. And that'll have links to all of my stuff, but I am one half of the Comedy Commander podcast, The Commander Sphere. And that was with my co-host Dan Sheehan, who's incredible. You should follow him as well. And then I am a part of a live play D&D game called Better Than Heroes. We play a Spelljammer inspired game, which means we play D&D in space on pirate ships, basically.
Fantastic.
It's incredible. We are now we tried to steal a Mind Flayer ship and now are about to get our brains sucked out. It's going to be a big episode on Monday.
So a D&D campaign.
A D&D campaign. You've heard of these.
Yeah,
and that's every Monday at 7 p.m. Pacific. And then I just had an episode of Game Nights come out, so check that out as well if you haven't already.
Absolutely.
You did. And I won't spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, but wow, Simic is still really strong.
It's very
weird.
Is it now? Is Simic still strong? I wouldn't have thought Simic was still strong.
Yeah, you know what? They didn't fix it in one set to make everything catch up.
Oh, gosh.
Alex, where can people find you?
Yeah, my people can get me on Twitter at Lappermedic, and you can email me directly at alex@edhrec.com.
All right, and Rachel, we're gonna have to talk later because you talked a bit. You said earlier that you tuned down the Phelddagrif deck, and I'm coming for you, Dana Roach.
You have to tune up the Phelddagrif deck.
So
I'll send you my tuned up list, but you don't want the list as it is.
I want
now.
the 9.5 power Phelddagrif list.
There was a Phelddagrif Flash Hulk deck.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
That's Phelddagrif at 10.
Yeah.
If you want to buy any of the cards we talked about, including the now banned Flash
I was
for
gonna
your
say.
Phelddagrif Flash deck,
Buy up all the
deck
flashes
boxes.
for when that gets never unbanned.
The most powerful competitive commander Phelddagrif.
If you want to look into purchasing any of the things we talked about, getting something to put them in, sleeves, deck boxes, all that good stuff, you can support us by, again, going to bit.ly/EDH Social. If you have any questions or comments for us, follow us on Twitter at EDH_social or email us at thesocialcontractedh@gmail.com. Absolute pleasure having you on, Rachel. We'll talk to you all soon.